The year was 1965. Just 18 years after the partition of British India, tensions between India and Pakistan escalated once again. Though both nations had fought a bitter war in 1947 over the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, the issue remained unresolved. Kashmir became a wound that festered, a geopolitical fault line constantly at risk of eruption. As both nations built their military strength and developed their identities, Kashmir remained a flashpoint, and in 1965, it would once again ignite into open warfare. The roots of the 1965 conflict can be traced to multiple strategic miscalculations. After its defeat in the 1962 Sino-Indian War, India was perceived as militarily weak. Pakistan's military leadership, under President Ayub Khan, believed this was their opportunity to strike. Pakistan had significantly strengthened its military ties with the United States and China and believed that a quick, decisive blow in Kashmir could force India into submission. This confidence led to the planning of Operation Gibraltar, a covert infiltration mission intended to incite rebellion in Indian-administered Kashmir. Thousands of Pakistani soldiers, disguised as local Kashmiri insurgents, crossed the ceasefire line into Indian territory. Their objective was to sabotage infrastructure, incite protests, and destabilize Indian control in the region. However, the operation failed almost immediately. Far from rising up in rebellion, the local Kashmiri population reported the infiltrators to Indian authorities. Indian forces quickly mobilized, launching a series of search-and-destroy missions to eliminate the infiltrators. The failure of Operation Gibraltar prompted Pakistan to escalate matters further. On September 1, 1965, Pakistan launched Operation Grand Slam, a full-scale military assault aimed at capturing the strategically important town of Ukhnur in Jammu. Seizing Ukhnur would have cut off Indian supply routes and isolated a large portion of its forces in Kashmir. The operation initially made gains, but a sudden change in command and delays in reinforcements stalled its momentum. In response, India took a bold and unprecedented step. On September 6, Indian forces crossed the international border and attacked Lahore and other parts of Pakistan's Punjab province. This was no longer a limited engagement in Kashmir, it had become an all-out war. The Indian offensive shocked Pakistan and caught international observers off guard. Indian troops quickly advanced toward Lahore, engaging Pakistani forces in fierce battles near the city's outskirts. At the same time, heavy fighting erupted in Sialkot, a key industrial and military hub. This region witnessed one of the largest tank battles since World War II, with both sides deploying massive armored units. In the Battle of Asal Uttar near Kem Karan, Indian forces achieved a major victory by ambushing Pakistani tanks in flooded sugarcane fields. Over 90 tanks were destroyed in just a few days, halting Pakistan's advance and turning the tide of the war. While land battles raged, the skies over the subcontinent were no less dramatic. The Indian Air Force and the Pakistan Air Force engaged in numerous dogfights and air raids. Both sides claimed aerial superiority, but analysts later concluded that neither was able to establish clear dominance. Pilots from both countries displayed extraordinary skill and courage, even as the war's brutality intensified. The naval component of the war, while limited, also played a symbolic role. The Indian Navy maintained a defensive posture, avoiding escalation in the Arabian Sea. However, naval readiness during the war laid the groundwork for greater maritime focus in future conflicts. Pakistan's navy was similarly restrained, as both sides recognized that expanding the war to sea would risk inviting more international intervention. Civilians bore the brunt of the conflict. Major cities faced blackouts. Refugees fled from border regions. Economies were disrupted, and both governments imposed emergency measures to manage the growing toll of war. Citizens took shelter in bunkers, schools were closed, and wartime rationing began in several areas. The psychological strain of living under the threat of air raids and artillery fire left a deep mark on the civilian populations of both countries. The international community watched with increasing concern. The United Nations called for an immediate ceasefire. The United States and Soviet Union, both anxious about escalating Cold War tensions, pressed for restraint. China, observing from the sidelines, issued diplomatic statements but avoided direct intervention. The potential for the conflict to spiral into a broader regional war was real and terrifying. On September 22, 1965, after 17 days of intense and bloody fighting, a ceasefire was declared under the auspices of the United Nations. Both India and Pakistan agreed to halt hostilities and return to their pre-conflict positions. Though the war had stopped, many questions remained unanswered. Who had won? What had been achieved? And what came next? In January 1966, Indian Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri and Pakistani President Ayub Khan met in the Soviet city of Tashkent to negotiate a peace agreement. The talks were hosted by Soviet Premier Alexei Kosygin. The Tashkent Agreement required both sides to withdraw from captured territories and normalize diplomatic relations. The agreement was signed, but controversy followed. In India, some viewed it as a political surrender that failed to capitalize on military gains. In Pakistan, the failure to achieve the stated goal of capturing Kashmir led to disillusionment and political unrest. Tragically, just hours after signing the agreement, Prime Minister Shastri died suddenly. His death shocked the nation and added a layer of mystery and sorrow to the outcome of the war. He was hailed as a quiet yet resolute leader, one who had taken bold steps in defense of his country but did not live to see the peace endure. His death in Tashkent continues to be a subject of speculation and theories, making the end of the 1965 war feel all the more incomplete. So who really won the war? From a strategic standpoint, Pakistan's plan to seize Kashmir had failed. Operation Gibraltar did not spark the expected rebellion. Operation Grand Slam stalled. India had not only defended its territory but also launched successful counterattacks across the border. Yet, due to the Tashkent Agreement and the ceasefire terms, India returned all captured territory, leaving many to wonder whether the sacrifices of the war had been in vain. The 1965 war was, in many ways, a military stalemate. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Thousands of soldiers were killed or wounded. Infrastructure was damaged. Economies were strained. And the political landscape of the subcontinent was forever changed. For India, the war reinforced the need for modernization of its military forces. For Pakistan, the war exposed flaws in its military leadership and strategy. Public morale in Pakistan, initially buoyed by government propaganda, began to fade as the reality of the failed objectives became clear. The war had lasting effects on diplomacy and international relations. Both countries turned inward in the years that followed. India began building towards self-reliance in defense. Pakistan leaned further toward China and continued to develop its military with foreign support. The war also strengthened the notion of needing nuclear deterrence, which would become more pronounced in the decades that followed. Perhaps the most lasting legacy of the 1965 war was psychological. It deepened the mistrust and hostility between the two nations. It hardened attitudes toward Kashmir. And it planted the seeds for the next major conflict in 1971, which would result in the creation of Bangladesh. The war also influenced global diplomacy, as superpowers realized the volatility of South Asia and the potential for nuclear escalation in the years to come. Culturally, the war left behind a trove of stories of heroism, sacrifice, and tragedy. In both India and Pakistan, soldiers became national icons. Memorials were erected. Songs and literature remembered their valor. Yet, for all the public displays of patriotism, the underlying pain of war, the loss of lives, the displacement of families, and the economic costs left scars that remain visible even today. The War of 1965 may not be remembered as a decisive victory or defeat, but it serves as a powerful reminder of the costs of unresolved conflict. It illustrates how misjudgments, nationalism, and territorial ambition can lead nations into confrontation. And it underscores the importance of diplomacy, communication, and strategic patience in preventing future wars. Today, more than 5 decades later, the echoes of 1965 continue to shape the geopolitics of South Asia. Soldiers are still stationed along the line of control. Skirmishes still break out. And Kashmir remains at the center of one of the world's most enduring rivalries. The lessons of 1965 remain relevant, not just for India and Pakistan, but for any region where history, politics, and geography collide in dangerous ways. Because sometimes, the only way to understand the future is to revisit the past.